So I have your book here that you kindly gave me last time I saw you. And this is an incredible book, A Guide to Mental Health for Early Years Educators. And it continues to be as relevant and important as always. So parents, carers, nannies, educators, care is everything. But it often comes at a cost. Sometimes it's our own well-being, how we feel, and of course, I love this as well. That is yours. It takes a bit hard to shape little minds. So if we are not okay, probably our children are not going to be okay. So I thought that was a really good conversation, especially for September when it's the settling in. It can become a very, very stressful period for everyone who is caring for others. So I would like to start just a little bit introducing, maybe if you can introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about your journey, your spark, where did all this amazing advocacy started for you?
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. That's such a lovely introduction. You've done a lot of the work for me. So I've actually worked in early years for nearly 30 years. So left school and went into a childcare route. I left my previous role. I was working as a leader within an infant and early years academy. I started their early years provision and was leading on, everything to do with the childcare provision and everything early years within the school. And I experienced burnout working in that role. Mental health wellbeing was just not something on my radar. It wasn't something we were ever taught about throughout my training when I went on and did a degree later on in my career. And so when, work was becoming a lot and different things were kind of, as life happens, stuff lands in your lap. I noticed that I wasn't recovering in the way that I perhaps normally would, but as a wife, as a mom, you just carry on, don't you? And, leading a group of people and working in a busy role, I just kind of kept on going. But what I started to notice from a lot of the work that I was doing with settings locally to me, and I'd started doing some work with a national charity, was that many other people were experiencing stress, maybe even burnout in a way that I was, and nobody was really talking about it. And we were just trying to get on with the role. And so eventually I decided to start my own training company and just kind of give it a go and put myself out there. And I didn't really realize at the time where it was going to lead to be honest with you. So I think really it stemmed from the lack of support that I noticed was out there for educators. How many educators were perhaps having to leave the profession because often, we see early years still as women's work, and it's often undervalued, and not always, but often women are also the default parent if you have chosen to have a family of your own. So often you're taking the burden, because it does become a burden over time, of not only caring in your work role, but also caring at home and carrying the emotional mental load of that. And with that comes a lot of pressure around being able to do it all. And often we don't want to perhaps admit that we are having a tricky time. We can just be really unkind to ourselves. And so actually it was just trying to create understanding and awareness of mental health, that it's something we all have. It's something it's important to talk about. And if we want to choose education, caregiving, early years as a long-term profession, then we've got to get better at understanding how we care for each other in the workplace, so we can do it for the long term, so we can enjoy it and be respected, in our careers and in the important work that we do in our communities.
That's so honest, and that's something that I always admire about you. You're so relatable. Your honesty, I think, is really brave because it's also much needed. And I like what you said. Actually, when you started working with other people, you realized you weren't alone. There were so many other people who were also feeling that stress, that burnout. Maybe they didn't recognize it, or as you were saying, maybe it's just sort of that silent guilt that sometimes we might carry and we just don't want to admit.
Yeah.
We have that label of, we can do it all. We just do it. And as you say, we can in so many ways, right? We can be partners, we can be parents, we can be educators, carers, and it's a lot that we need to carry. So yeah, there is. I like what you said as well about kindness. We do need to have that compassion and that kindness to ourselves. And well-being, I think, is such a buzzword these days, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we even have it now in Ofsted, so we need to look after everyone's well-being. But it is sort of like a tick boxing exercise. And I have here just a little stat that says a survey in 2022 by Education Support found that 77% of education professionals experience symptoms of poor mental health due to work. I think 77% is a huge stat, right?
Yeah.
It's quite sad to think that most of them are not communicating what's happening to them. So you were saying, when you are not communicating, when you are not having that support, when you don't find your own voice, that becomes a burden that you have to carry. So yes, I would love to know, maybe then in practice, just looking back at your journey, so what then well-being means in practice for you.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, when wellbeing was introduced by Ofsted in the education inspection framework, it was quickly seen as something to quickly tick off the list. So wellbeing is often thought as quite like surface level. So let's do a yoga session, or let's do a workshop on resilience, or let's give out some chocolate bars and mugs and things. And those things are lovely. Don't get me wrong. Who doesn't want professional development training, or who doesn't want some chocolate or a gift?
Yeah.
But if I'm not having support in the workplace, if the systemic culture in the workplace isn't well thought out and structured with strategy around well-being that protects us from the pressures and workload of the role, because like you mentioned there with that survey, what we understand is that choosing a career in early years comes with a high workload, a high pressure, a lot of stress. It's a wonderful role. There's no job like it in the world. And let's not forget that. That's why so many people enter into this profession, because it is wonderful. But we also have to be realistic with the workload that comes with it. So, recognizing staff voice, striving for equity within our workplaces, emotionally intelligent leadership, inclusive leadership that is aware. And I think this is the other point around understanding well-being, is that when we look through an intersectional lens, we can recognize how our identity is really important to understand how we might manage or deal with stress, because the workload is stressful, and we go to work and maybe experience the same stress as our colleagues, whatever, but one of us might become unwell and one of us might be okay. And the difference with how we're able to manage that stress, or our tolerance or vulnerability to stress, has got everything to do with our identity, our life experience, whether it's our gender, socioeconomic background. Also thinking about understanding how, especially what's happening in the world at the moment. There's awful things happening in the world, but recognizing racism within all of our communities, how that affects our self-esteem, our sense of self-worth, how we're protected and supported in the workplace. Because if we are protecting staff well-being and supporting, their well-being and centering their perspectives, then what we're able to do is create psychologically safe environments where staff can show up to work and be seen and feel valued, recognised and understood. And I think that when Ofsted included the word well-being, a lot of people use the word well-being instead of mental health. And I think it's so important that we continue to talk about mental health and understand it, because mental health is everything to do with how we think, feel and behave. And so, like we were just talking about, if we are feeling a little bit exhausted as we head through the autumn term, because let's face it, it's full of transition and change. The weather changes, we're getting to know new children and families, maybe even working with new staff members. There's a lot going on. And if we've got, again, our own life outside of work, and we're managing and dealing with different things as well, then often we can become exhausted. And so a big part of that exhaustion can be linked to psychologically, emotionally, thoughts, feelings. So we can start to, just give ourselves a hard time. We can start to be, that's often how it shows up first. Feeling professionally, with regard to our self-esteem, like maybe I'm not, trying hard enough. Maybe I'm not good enough, and we don't always recognise that. So So yeah, I think well-being is so important for us to really, take seriously and try to embed a deep culture of well-being that everybody respects and understands, for all of our people and all of our children. And it makes a huge difference to the quality of our practice as well.
I love some of the vocabulary you've used that I could unpick so much, but identity, intelligent leadership, for instance, that's really important because, especially from the point of view of leadership, it's not only managing and supporting a team, but also yourself as a leader, how you are showing up yourself as a leader, but also how you're being compassionate as well to yourself and being aware of what lenses are you looking through, what's actually your background, your own experiences. I think that's really important. And I love that you say it has to be something that is woven and it becomes a culture where everyone feels seen, everyone is valued, everyone is heard. And also the awareness. And I think you're right, mental health sometimes, I think we also discussed this in your training, it becomes a little bit of a stigma. It's not a word that for some reason it's not being as used. And by default, we just refer to everything under the umbrella of well-being, but we do need to raise awareness. We do need to be brave and have those conversations because ultimately that's how we're going to normalize it and make sure that everyone is there for each other. So I love that vocabulary. So going to the burnout and obviously, as you were saying, for instance, the autumn term, and actually this is worthwhile both for educators but also for families because families are exactly the same. There is a point where you're thinking,
Yeah.
good enough? Am I doing a good job? Because you're showing up there 24/7 when you have children. So I think it's also really important for parents to recognize as well those signs and being aware as well of their own emotional or anything that they're carrying themselves. So when you talk about the cost of caring, which I love, is such an interesting term because I don't think it's talked enough about. So what that really means to you and how can parents and educators recognize when they are running on empty? Because sometimes, you need to fill your own cup. If you're running out empty, there is no fuel, how can you care for someone else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think caring roles, and often there's a disparity, or we're not sure on language around teachers or educators or carers. But I think if you are teaching in the early years, foundation stage, then part of that role is still caregiving because children are so young, their brains are still developing and shaping. Often children are still maybe just even 4 years old. So, caring roles, and I'm including teachers within that, demand such deep emotional labour. We're always giving empathy, we're always caring, our energy is always holding space for other people, and understanding that the cost of caring, if we're not careful, can lead to or take a toll on our physical and our mental health. And as we've said, leads to burnout. We spoke about in our training session, the research on burnout and compassion fatigue is prevalent in roles where we help people. And it's in those intense environments where we are caring. And I think, again, we've kind of been raised or socialized, especially as women, that we should be always able to do these things. And so we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and we can often create we can be maybe quite judgmental or make assumptions of other people, because we've been conditioned to do things for other people. And actually, it's trying to understand what's best for us, what's best for our children, what's best for our environment. And again, it's recognizing that the skills we have, so that's care, compassion, empathy, patience, all the skills we need to do this role, they can get taken away. They can be eroded. They can be worn down if we're not careful. And so it's not just waiting to spot the signs of burnout or poor mental health. So recognizing when I'm feeling irritable or emotional, or when my body is, I've got kind of a code red, an alert that I'm stressed or I'm overwhelmed. It's also making space for and promoting well-being from a positive perspective and understanding mental health. So when I'm feeling healthy and well, what does that look like and sound like and feel like for me? And if I'm able to make space for that and recognize that, then I might be more able to recognize when those things start to change, when my stress signature maybe starts to, make itself known, or, but often again, if we're working term time or if we're working in care professions, we try to just keep on going, wait till the end of the day, wait till the weekend. And so then it's recognizing, okay, well, as part of that positive mental health, as part of respecting my well-being and the well-being of my people, how do we rest and restore and replenish? How do we make sure we're having break times? How do we positively influence people around us so we're finding that work-life balance and we're doing less, not more? Because if we already have high expectations of each other and we're about providing high quality care, and we have had the support we need within the workplace, then we've got to have agreed we're all here for the same reason. And so we want people who want to be part of this community that are working towards the same aim, and recognise that we all share the same values, the same, mission to provide high quality care for children. And so that's also got to then hold space for, centering our well-being, centering how important it is to normalise that actually burnout is an indicator of systemic pressure within the workplace. Something's not working operationally. It's not a personal failure, and often we don't tend to think like that because we haven't been taught or trained about it throughout our careers. Mm-hmm. It's a different way of thinking about it. And I just would also add there that mission on, have I got the right people here? Because also at the same time, sometimes there are people that are showing up and perhaps they're biding time. Maybe this job isn't for them. Maybe, this is a stepping stone for something else. Maybe they're not fully on board with those values. And actually to do this role, we need people that have to be like certain on, we're aligned with our vision of pedagogy. We're aligned with our vision of care and nurturing children, because if we're not, then we're always going to have that imbalance. And often I think that can cause, that friction. And so being realistic really about, the challenges that often sometimes line managers and leaders might face.
It's so true what you say about being aligned, and, is this the right place for you, in the sense that, are you sharing the same vision? And this is so important for everyone, because also it allows you to feel that you belong. And that's such a powerful thing for a human being.
Yes.
Feeling that you belong. Yeah, this is my place. This is what I want to do. Support. I'm part of a team. We're all gearing for the same mission and vision. Yeah, I think that's really important. You feel that fulfillment and motivation. But I also find interesting what you just said, that is something that we were never really given training. We never were really given any tools or strategies. There was never really discussion around that. And yet, these days, we are really good as teachers and educators and parents are trying to model for our children, trying to teach them emotional regulation, trying to teach them the emotional vocabulary so they can express themselves. We always are asking them to sort of like check in and trying to understand how they're feeling. So we are so good with children these days, are really trying for them to understand how they feel so they can communicate and express themselves. But yet we don't do the same with ourselves at all. So we should really be modeling that for our children, right? If you're not having that much energy, you should be able to say that and model to your child, and then model, what am I going to do about this? We all have slow ups and lows. There are days that as you said, you just need to maybe just slow down. And that doesn't mean you're not doing enough. You're just doing the best you can with the energy or what you have in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of my own daughter. She's 20 now. She's about to start her second year at uni. And I think about times throughout her life, especially pivotal moments like turning 18 and then going off to uni and all of those things. Often around that age, people are asking, well, what are you going to do with your life, and where's it going to lead, and what do you want for your future? As a parent, I want her to be healthy. I've learned the hard way that we can't take our health for granted. I want her to be healthy, but actually I've shown her the opposite throughout periods of her lifetime. She's seen me keep on going and I'm not talking about being resilient here, because I think often as women, as educators, we're exhausted by our resilience, so we keep on going. We don't rest. We feel, quite guilty sometimes. And I think, again, that can come from those patriarchal ideas around that women, we must always care for others first. Self-care is something that, is selfish. It's almost an afterthought. There are times where I could have shown my daughter that actually self-care was a radical act of resistance. It's part of it. Well, it's essential for me to be able to show up, because there are times when I would have got home after working, within a nursery or a school, and she would have been much younger, and I had really nothing left for her, no patience left. She wasn't getting the best of me, and I was still trying to show her to keep on going, keep on going. And actually, what I hope, even though it's been really challenging for us at times when I've experienced poor mental health, was that actually it's okay to rest, it's okay to pause, and we're able to start again. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away when something isn't, working out for you. And so there are things that I hope that she would do differently, within her life. Because that's always the way, isn't it? As parents, we're always trying to provide the best for our children. So I think it's trying to reframe it, like to get the best of me, to be able to show up and be that manager at work, that educator, that nanny, or just to show up at home, or to be a wife, a mom, a daughter, a friend. What do I need? And I'm worthy and deserving of all aspects in life that give me joy and fulfill me and make me feel good about myself, that nourish me, and not just exist to work and work and work. Because again, I don't want that for her,
I love the radical resistance, and it's so true. It's sort of, we see it sometimes vulnerability, and we feel guilty, and we see it as shameful. And as you say, it's almost self-care is almost not accepted. You feel guilty, but it's quite the opposite. And especially if you want your children to become emotionally intelligent, you need to model that as well. I love that. I need to remember that phrase as well. But yeah, so actually, when we think about it, thinking about your personal journey, as you were saying, it can feel very lonely as well, right? When you're caring for someone, as you were saying, I like how you express it as well. You're holding that space and that time for other people rather than yourself. And I like also how you talk about the importance of, therefore, bringing joy. And that's something that we do a lot in Rocket. We really focus on bringing joy back to teaching, bringing joy back to childhood, really honoring, those connections and holding a space to connect and care for each other. So I would love to hear a little bit more about, your thoughts around how you bring that joy and inclusion within an environment.
Yeah, and I love the use of the word joy and trying to bring it back in, because again, often if we're not careful, then we can be focusing always on the negative, or always the things that have gone wrong. And I think sometimes that might stem in early years in education from how we're regulated, because we're always self-improving, aren't we? We're always trying to, get to the next goal, or whatever. And actually, what we know for sure is all we've really got is right now. And actually right now, in some of our communities might feel quite bleak, might feel dangerous, might feel unsafe, might feel scary or overwhelming. And so actually, there is still joy to be found. And so, we want to be able to find, joyful care, create those spaces where, we're able to notice those little glimmers, those moments of joy and satisfaction, those little interactions, because often we're so busy going about our day, preparing for the next thing, thinking about what's coming up down the line, that we're not always, here in that moment. And so really trying to find those spaces where we're able to show up and be all of who we are, and get to know our people. And the more we get to know each other, the more joyful, the more connected we're going to be. We talked earlier about I think you talked about well-being and about inclusion. I can't remember quite how you said it now, but for me, you can't separate well-being and inclusion. Inclusion comes hand in hand with well-being, because I think it was how you talked about belonging.
Mm.
And I think there's a big difference between trying to fit in somewhere and belonging, feeling connected to your people. And when people understand things about you, and they're focusing on skills or strengths, they've picked up on something that you are fascinated in or you're interested in, like we do with children, when we get to know them and we celebrate them. When we're doing that with each other, when it's a transactional relationship, you know it feels so good. That connection is so huge, and that connection, leads to feeling as though you belong, you feel included, embraced, within a space, and that makes a huge difference to the quality of our practice, the way that we connect with each other, and joy is, I think, just as important as the policies and the procedures that we have in place,
Mhm.
because going to work should be good for us. It should have a positive impact on our well-being. And, joy might be experienced or felt differently by different people. Some of us are more overt, and maybe laugh out loud and show our sense of humour or our joy in some ways. And it's respecting, again, our differences in how that joy might show up. And so I think it's building those spaces where we feel safe, seen, and supported, and always trying to find those moments that can bring us those glimmers. But I think we can only get to that place if we're able to recognise that sometimes things are tough, things are rubbish, because we're being authentic, like we said at the start, being vulnerable with each other. If I've shared something with you that's perhaps, quite painful or quite personal or quite true, I'm being authentic about what I'm speaking about. Then what I've learned, especially from connecting with other people, is that does bring a sense of understanding, a sense of compassion, a sense of connection, and then that's then the foundation of which everything else can be built upon.
Mm. Yeah, that's really powerful, because you really need to reflect, and making sure that, as you say, everyone, is that very, very big difference about feeling that you belong to or feeling that you have to fit in, because then that's artificial and it just adds more stress. Whereas when you feel like you belong to, as you said, it's a little bit like family, feels that psychological safety. You feel safe because you feel accepted and everyone knows you. And yeah, that's a joy. And I love how you use glimmers. I think is definitely
Yeah.
my favorite word. And we're so busy, whether we're educators, parents, nannies, carers, we're always on the go. And I think it's so important, especially to model our children, that, there are times where we can slow down. So even if you are walking, just, stop or walk very slow and just be present and just look around and just see what you can see. I mean, often children can spot the most magical things, right? Because they have this incredible imagination. So, tuning in what's around you, listening for sounds, even the air, how does it feel, just looking at leaves, the light. Yeah, and those are definitely
Yeah.
glimmers. I love this. This is also from yours. And I love this bit that you wrote here. I give myself permission to rediscover my own happiness, joy, and glimmers. And I think we all should definitely take more time to find our own glimmers of joy. And especially sometimes I think, this discussion these days around social media, browsing, even children with attention span, because now they're used to be always, fleeting their attention. And it's so important now that we're present and connect. Otherwise, we're going to lose that human connection. And that's so important for joy, for happiness, and obviously being well. And yeah, now that I'm holding this as well, I'm looking at your book. So I think to wrap up this amazing conversation, I think it will be so nice maybe for you to tell us, maybe, what's something when you were writing this book, was there a special, like a key takeaway you hope educators will take away from this book?
I suppose I was writing that book during COVID, and I was able to write that book with the support of other people. It's got lots of lived experiences from educators who are currently doing the role, whether it's nannies or childminders. There's a variety of different perspectives in the group. Again, thinking about our identity and how that differs. There's not a one size fits all when it comes to being an educator or when we're thinking about our health and well-being. So that was so joyful, having that time during COVID to have conversations with some, inspiring people doing amazing work, because I recognise that I'm not hands-on in the role in the way that I used to be, and so I wanted to understand other people's perspectives that might be different from our own. And I think that what stood out was that you're not alone, and that actually it's often a lot of the emphasis is put on you as an individual, you as a person, to thrive or be healthy or to take care of yourself. But actually, we need to be connected and be part of a community, a collective. It's that sense of you are not alone, and your well-being matters just as much as the children's does. And so when we're looking after adults and we're looking after carers, we're looking after the children as well, and we're investing in their future. And actually, we're investing in, our, I suppose, future generations, aren't we? We're investing in our society. Our work has a huge impact, for everyone. And again, COVID taught us that. What we were able to see is that, without educators, without the work that we are doing, then nothing else would be possible. We're the cornerstone in all of our communities. So that central theme of, you are not alone, your well-being matters just as much as the children's. And hopefully that book, centering mental health, because at the time there wasn't a book around educator mental health. It was really important to say the words mental health, to understand it, and recognize that you are not alone, and that it's finding that community, finding that workplace, finding that collective of people, so that you can enjoy your work, you can thrive, you can flourish. It's not just about surviving. So yeah, that, I suppose that's how I would sum that up.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that you said, yeah, when you're not alone. So that sense of community and having support and connections. So is there something that was giving you hope right now? Then we obviously survived COVID, and it's been now a couple of years that you wrote this book. So what's giving you hope these days?
Giving me hope? Oh gosh. Lots of things. I think, again, finding your people. I think finding where they are. I think in the world of social media, you're able to connect with so many different people with different perspectives. And I think, again, it is trying to find those like-minded people that share your values, share your beliefs. And so I think it's hope for that there is good out there. There is justice out there, and we can look after each other. It's just trying to find those right people, and have hope for that, and hope for the future. I think that's so important. I think you can't organize anything without hope. Hope is such a powerful word. We all need it in our life, whether we are unwell, whether we're recovering from an illness, or whether we're feeling lost or stuck or alone in a situation. And hope just gives that a reminder that things can change, things can be different, things don't stay the same forever, and that hopefully there's always someone close to us, that has got our back, someone that wants to, have that conversation with us, wants to support us. So yeah, hope is such a powerful word to me.